Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're going to be doing a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I've got a super exciting update video for you guys today, because last week the Sharp X68000 core was actually updated with new implementations, new fixes, and new games working. And I missed this because my wife and I have adopted a new puppy, and that new puppy has basically been waking me up 3 times a night to go to the bathroom, so I have been absolutely exhausted, and somehow I just did not see this one slip through the cracks. So we're definitely going to be talking about it today, because you know one thing, I love the Sharp X68000. It is the #1 core that isn't finished on MiSTer FPGA that I would love to see completed. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But this work is from Zet Sensei work as well as Rebel 40, kind of a combination, adding in some of the changes that Pooh has listed on his own X68000 core. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and luckily in this instance we're getting a very delicious product out of that work, because anytime there's new playable games on the Sharp X68000 core, you know I'm going to be talking about it because I love it. And right off the top, Twin Cobra is a game that never worked in the core before and now works down to some keyboard changes, because you have to remember the Sharp X68000 uses a completely different style of keyboard than something like your traditional US or Western keyboard, and sometimes you're not going to be able to actually control the game because there's issues in it. If you've never played Twin Cobra before, get prepared to die a metric crap ton. This game holds absolutely no punches back. It is going to kill you time and time again. It's going to push you back every single time you die, so you really have to learn all of the patterns and get really good at this game. Has some Tatsujin O vibes to it as far as the difficulty and the bombs are concerned, but it is one of those titles that's absolutely coveted on the X68000, and it's one of those shmups that's going to test you time and time again in taking those deaths and getting sent back. And it is also interesting because it uses the horizontal screen configuration, but it is a vertical shmup, so it's not tate, but it is moving up into the screen. And again, the fact that this even works now where it didn't before means that the core is seeing progress, and a lot of times this is how progress gets made. It's in little incremental steps, bringing you a couple extra games. There's also going to be some fixes to MIDI audio, which I'll talk about later in the video. But again, the Sharp X68000 core has been around for a long time, and it is relatively usable. I'll have a couple videos, maybe next month or the month after that when I schedule them, showing you a lot of the games that you can play in the core from start to finish and have fun with, because in some games you have absolutely no idea that it was an unfinished core, and in other games it would be pretty apparent right off the top when it either didn't load whatsoever, isn't controllable, have some bad graphical corruption on screen. It's really interesting. You have to remember that not every single piece needs to be 100% strung together or correct for a lot of games to function, as we've seen with other test cores, or something like Dai Makimura here, or Ghouls and Ghosts. It is just one of those games. It's on so many different platforms, but I love the Sharp X68000 version, and according to the note fixes, it used to freeze when you were using MIDI as well, and that has been fixed up, because MIDI is so synonymous with the X68000, and having the MT32 Pi working to get you that MIDI audio was just one of the fun things about MiSTer FPGA. I've done some videos in the past. If you want to see more, leave me a comment down below. But this is a game that you can play from start to finish, just enjoying it on the X68000 core today. And I totally understand we have that arcade core from Hotego on the arcade side of things. We also have other ways to play it, but the X68000 has a very distinct look and vibe to it, and it is one of those platforms basically pretty much everyone wants to own one, even if they don't want to pay the expense, and it is a pain to actually deal with them as well. They need to get their power supplies completely replaced. A lot of the boards need a complete recap. You have to have a SCSI to SD emulator if you want to really use hard drives, and the #1 thing you need is a lot of money, because X68000 hardware and games is absolutely going to make your wallet hemorrhage cash. So having a completed FPGA core is going to be amazing one day, because as good as X68000 software emulation is, it is one of the harder emulators to set up as far as a PC is concerned, and it's one of those things you definitely feel like you're not playing the real hardware when you're using the emulator on that front. Not to knock software emulation, just one of those things that doesn't bring the same vibe and feel to the party like something like original X68000 hardware or even the core does. But here's your soundtrack sample. It isn't the MIDI version because I actually prefer the original, but go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll come back and show you more X68000 games that work in the core and talk more about the improvements we've seen and what I hope to see in the future. Just absolutely iconic music, and I don't want to spoil too much of what I have planned in the future. I told Patreon this months and months and months ago, but if you like Ghouls and Ghosts, expect a retrospective this fall and into winter, because I have played every single Ghouls and Ghosts game ever made and reviewed it in a retrospective fashion, so hopefully that does well, because we're going to have a lot of episodes of it. Or something like Final Fight here, absolutely amazing version. I know, again, we have the CPS core on the arcade side of things, but the X68000 version has a lot of benefits, one of those being MIDI sound, but unfortunately it's still one of the games that apparently, according to the GitHub notes, will freeze when you actually try to use MIDI. And basically what happened was they changed some ports around to try to get MIDI implementation to work better, because remember, the X68000 is a PC. There's more than one way to make anything work, and sometimes it doesn't work the way you're thinking it should. So kind of updating those ports, moving things around, and just seeing what happens is part of getting these cores made. Because on a console, something like Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, PlayStation, Super Nintendo, or otherwise, all of the hardware just works one way because it was designed that way. The X68000 is a PC, and think about PCs back in the day when you're in the DOS era or Windows 3.1 or even 95 or 98, how often things just wouldn't work the way you expected them to. It was basically plug and pray, not plug and play back then. You just had to hope that what you were trying to do would actually function. So that is some of the challenge in making an FPGA core for the X68000 as well. You have so many different games and so many different developers doing so many different things with the hardware. What works in one game might completely screw the other game up, and that is exactly the case on real hardware as well. Sometimes things just don't like to work the way that everything else does, but something like Twin Bee here on the X68000, another spectacular game that's going to have MIDI, that's going to have near to perfect graphics, and it's going to be a ton of fun. As you get later on into this game, you will start seeing some slight graphical corruption on some of the layers, but it really isn't going to affect you having fun. But that's why I love seeing updates like the X68000 core, and why I hope it continues, because this is, more so than any other core, the one I want to see on MiSTer FPGA outside of the 3DO, because you know I just love that console. But if I'm talking about the system that probably needs the love the most, the Sharp X68000 is the one computer that really does need this preservation, because original hardware, again, is just such a mess. If you want to have an original X68000 with a replaced power supply and a recap board, something like SCSI to SD or Blue SCSI running your games off virtual hard drive images, you are talking probably on a good day over $2,000, and then if it's in Japan, you have to have the thing shipped here, and then you still have to deal with the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor, the peripherals, because a lot of these games do run in 24 kilohertz or medium resolution mode, which can be a chore to use on real hardware as well. But the one thing that's not a chore is the soundtrack in this game. It is a straight up 10 out of 10, and some of the best music I think Konami has ever made for any of their shmups. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, but come back, because I got even more fun to show you on this. Just iconic music, and I know it's never going to be possible because it's just how MiSTer FPGA works, but the one thing I wish this core would do in the future is actually allow you to load up some floppy disks, because weirdly I don't actually own an X68000 computer. I've always wanted one, but I've always held off purchasing one because I knew the MiSTer FPGA core existed and is being worked on again. But it's one of those things, I do collect X68000 games just because I absolutely love having them on the shelf, and it is a ton of fun just to own them and kind of check them out. And there's so many incredible games on the X68000. Choren Sha 68K, a banger of a shmup that is just a ton of fun to play in the core. It's one of those things, there's so many games on the X68000 that are undiscovered by most people. Sure, everyone knows about the Castlevania remake on there, or Final Fight, games like that, even the Street Fighters, but there's hundreds upon hundreds of games on the X68000 that people probably don't even realize exist, and they would have a metric ton of fun with them if they just knew about it. But I get it, most people that use MiSTer FPGA don't really really want to play a core that is unfinished, even though I can't recommend enough that you guys do check them out. There's so much fun to be had here. Akumajo Dracula with the MT32 working in conjunction to get you MIDI audio is one of my favorite Castlevania experiences of all time, and as I showed in a previous video, there's a lot of ways to make the core more fun, including using Zuki's own USB keyboard with an X68000 button layout, and that is partially what this core update does, is change around some of the implementations in the keyboard, because again, something like Twin Cobra would not work until those changes were in. You might be able to launch the game, but you couldn't actually interact with it, and if you like visual novels, they have those as well in all sorts of different genres depending on your taste. But I am so excited that the X68000 core updated, and I hope to see more updates come this year because it feels like it's so close to done, but that last maybe 10 to 15% of work definitely is apparent. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite X68000 game. I would be curious, but we're done. The core is on the MiSTer Discord, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.